Welcome to the Real Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Troyer. My goal is to talk multifamily real estate, help you think bigger and take action on your goals, and give you tips on podcast creation and strategy. Please follow, like, and subscribe, and leave a review. That would mean the world to me. Share with someone that could benefit from this podcast. I've spent thousands of hours evaluating hundreds of multifamily properties, and I've learned that most of them are not deals. I'm going to show you the 6 things you need to evaluate a commercial apartment complex and to underwrite it correctly to make sure you're not paying more than it's worth. The first step is to gather all the information related to the property. So ideally, you would have an OM. This is if the property is being sold by a broker. If you're going direct to seller, you probably won't get an OM, but at the least, you should get the trailing 12 financials or a P&L and a rent roll. This is important because the rent roll shows you how many of the units are actually rented out. It gives you the occupancy percentage. The T12 shows you the trailing income, all the different income items, as well as all the expense line items involved. Some things to look for on the rent roll, delinquencies are a big thing. Make sure the tenants are actually paying. They're not just staying there. Look for the top rents that are achieved at the property. Look for the unit mix. The rent roll can be very insightful. The T12 is also very important. See if you can find discrepancies. Make sure all the line items are listed. This could include taxes and insurance, utilities, management fees, repairs and maintenance, etc. Those should all be on the T12. The next step is to do market analysis. Some things to look for: median household income, population growth, job growth, crime score in the area. To name a few. Number 3 is to do a neighborhood analysis. So this goes more in depth on the neighborhood, and I have some spreadsheets that I like to use to determine this. Neighborhood analysis includes median household income. This is a very important metric. You want to make sure the tenants in this area are able to actually pay the rent. And what we look for is 3 times the monthly income times rent amount. So let's say rent is $700 a month at your property. You want the median household income to be at least $2,100 per month. Median contract rent, that is the average rent in the market. That might not be quite as important, but it's still a good metric to look at. The crime rate in that zip code is very important. You don't want to have high crime. The unemployment rate versus the city unemployment rate is important as well. That kind of gives you an idea of the pocket, the demographic that lives there. Another metric that is important to look at in the neighborhood analysis is the ethnicity mix. That is important as well. Number 4 is some softwares I'll cover. Apartments.com is very helpful for rent comps. If you have access to a CoStar, that is a plus. You can do rent comps through CoStar as well, but it is pretty expensive. Some other options for rent comping: a Rentometer, a Zillow. You can also call local property managers to see what rents are in that market. Just a pro tip here: if you are looking at a property that has some units renovated, look at the rent roll and see what those units are achieving, and then you can use that for the max allowable rents for the whole property in your pro forma. And we'll talk about a pro forma later. Some other things that are helpful: Google Maps is very helpful. I like to do a virtual driving on Google Maps. This is a pretty cool trick to use. Do Street View and just drive around and see what the neighborhood looks like. You can get an idea of what class of property that you're looking at, also what neighboring properties look like, see if there's any boarded up buildings or what part of town it is. See if there's another important thing to look at is path of progress. So make sure it's in a growing area. City-data is a huge thing that I like to use to gather a lot of this information. And on my spreadsheet, I have a link to a lot of these that you can use to quickly access these softwares. Number 4, let's talk about some assumptions, some key assumptions in underwriting. The first, rent growth is very important. This can really skew your returns. Be sure to check what the rent growth is in the market and be conservative with rent growth. I'd say anything over 3% is pretty aggressive. So I like to be anywhere from 2 to 3% rent growth year over year. And it might be less than that if rents have been kind of flat recently. So you might want to, just depending on the market, you might want to project 0% rent growth for a couple of years. Another very important metric is exit cap rate. We like to project an exit cap rate that is roughly 50 basis points or 0.5% higher than the current market cap rate. Now, an important distinction is the current cap rate is different from the property cap rate. So if you're buying the property at a higher cap rate to make the deal work, you want to base your exit cap rate off of the market cap rate, not the property cap rate, to make sure you're getting as close as possible to the exit scenario that is likely to happen. And just a quick overview of the cap rate. The higher the cap rate, the lower the value of the property. That is why we want to project a higher cap rate at exit, just to be conservative in case there is some expansion in cap rates. But ideally, we want to sell at a lower cap rate just because that gives us a higher valuation at sale. But we project a higher cap rate just to be safe. Another important thing is the pro forma rents. So doing rent comping is very important when it comes to underwriting. Make sure your pro forma rents, that is your year 1 to year 5 rents, are supported by market comps. And overshooting this can be very detrimental. Overshooting this can really inflate the returns that you're projecting. So just be sure to be not at the top of the market, but more kind of middle towards the top, I'd say, with comparable properties. And number 5, this is also very important. Once you have all of this information, first you do the market analysis, the neighborhood analysis, make sure the property is worth pursuing further. You can do a quick check on the T12. If the NOI, let's say you take the NOI divided by the asking price, if the cap rate is way off from what your market is, let's say it's much lower than what your market cap rate is, it might not be worth checking into the deal deeper. You'll get a feel for this as you look at a lot of properties. But let's say, for example, the asking cap rate is 4% and you're in a C-class market, you know immediately that that property likely won't pencil out unless there's a significant upside to be created in the deal. So for an underwriting tool, I created a spreadsheet, spent hours upon hours building this spreadsheet, and it's created specifically for multifamily apartment complexes, not only to create a scenario for now, but also to build out a pro forma. So I have access to that spreadsheet inside of my course. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can reach out to me via DM or comment on this video or schedule a call below. I'd be happy to work with you one-on-one as well to help you get the A to Z needed for underwriting multifamily from A to Z. Make sure you're not overpaying for a property, because a lot of the properties that are on market right now are not deals. So I just want to help you make sure you're not overpaying for a property, and I'd love to work with you on that. So thanks again for watching. Remember, future is bright. Keep climbing, and I will see you on the next one.